Aloha! Welcome to the Live Ukulele podcast. My name is Brad Bordessa. Thank you for joining me today. This is a very much pre-recorded and intentional pre-recording of the podcast because as you are listening to this, or it's being published on the Saturday, the first and third Saturdays, that's when the podcast is published, right? I am at Uncle George's Slack Key and Ukulele workshop in Napili, Maui. I've probably been working my butt off for about half of a week already. The new schedule for the workshop is that it starts on Wednesday and goes to Wednesday because Uncle George has the Slack Key show on Wednesdays, and by straddling the Wednesdays, he gets to have two shows with all of his hot teacher artists in town for the workshop. And so it is mid-May as I record this. I can't believe next month is June. Oh my gosh. Just getting ahead of things here. Gonna put this up and share with you some thoughts that I have about workshops and gatherings and, considerations to have as you go into events like that, and maybe even some reflections of my own about workshops and coming at it from a teacher side of things. Want to remind you to please go check out my new video course called Left Hand Technique for Ukulele, just like my ebook, Left Hand Technique for Ukulele. The course covers similar content, but is hugely expanded and, of course, is presented via video lessons. I am quite proud of it. I'm super excited for everybody who has already joined me over there inside the membership portal and has been working their way through the lessons. Feedback has been great. Would love to see you over there. I think that this is sort of, I'm going to Maui to teach a lot of these things just kind of by default, because in the course I cover so many of the concepts that I usually want to bring to people when they go to workshops to learn or whatever. Those things that I teach at workshops, I took all the very best of that, and everything that I don't have time to teach at the workshops, I bring that and explain it in these 50 lessons that you get with Left Hand Technique for Ukulele. So I'll drop a link in the podcast description. Please go check it out if you're so inclined. It's kind of my beginner to intermediate view on how to navigate the instrument, how to fret notes better, how to traverse the fretboard, and really hopefully develop your musicality and be able to play things more expressively. So workshops are where I cut my teeth. When I was 13 or 14, I ended up hanging out with my friend Isaac Wong, who we kind of grew up honing our chops together and playing music and playing some gigs. And he was learning at the time from Kiyoki Kahumoku, who is Uncle George's son. And Uncle Kiyoki at that time was doing workshops in Pahala, which is a tiny little plantation town far in the south of the island, far away from anywhere. Lovely spot, full of lovely people, but is very secluded. And we would go there once a year and spend a week working out of the plantation house, kind of the overseers, or the Luna is how you say it in Hawaiian. I'm not even sure what the English translation would be. It's just like the Luna was the head honcho guy at the plantation who kept an eye on things, made sure everything was running smoothly. And at that plantation house is where I first became really inspired to play music and learned a lot of the things that helped me become who I am as a player and as a teacher. And so that workshop environment is very familiar to me. Uncle George's workshop is quite different, just in terms of how it's put together, how it's organized. It's a little bit more structured, a little more, I don't think safe is the right word, but something along those lines where it's, it's a little more in the box. Uncle Kiyoki's workshop was a little bit more, pins and needles the whole week, and maybe a little bit more rough around the edges Hawaiian style. We loved it. It was absolutely, without a doubt, the highlight of the year for many, many years. And so now I am teaching at Uncle George's workshop, and I see a lot of parallels between the students. It's usually, and I hate to put anybody in a box, but at these workshops, it's a lot of the same crowd. It's a lot of the same enthusiast people who, that's kind of what they do. That's how they spend their free time, or maybe their vacation money is, instead of jet setting around the world to Europe or Taiwan or wherever, they're going to these music camps. And so, if you're one of these folks, or you want to become one of these folks, I feel like workshops are a fabulous opportunity for people to learn, especially Hawaiian music. I can't really speak for workshops as they're done in the mainland so much, because I know the lineups are different, the styles of music that are taught are different. But if you want to learn Hawaiian music, this is kind of the way to do it. There's Aloha Music Camp. There is Uncle George Kahumoku Slack and Ukulele Workshop, which I'm talking about. Kimo Hussey was doing one for a while. There's several, and they come and go over the years because it's a lot to put on. But overall, the concept and the structure is really fabulous for learning Hawaiian music. The number one thing that I notice of folks who are going to these workshops is that it's a little bit of a struggle as a teacher to keep things moving forward year after year. Because I see the same students, over the years, and we get to know each other. We have a nice rapport, and they're always in my classes, and they learn all kinds of things. But a lot of the times, I feel like, in a sense, I'm sort of teaching the same thing many times, just in different ways, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. But for the students' benefit, I feel like the first thing that you can do when you are heading to a workshop like this is, if you kind of make sure you have used up all of the juice that you had from the previous year. Or if you're just going in fresh, if it's your first time, make sure that you are kind of maxed out on stuff that you otherwise have access to, right? I feel like the opportunities that a workshop presents is it's access to fantastic musicians. Uncle George has Herb Ota Jr. on the lineup. I believe Brian Tolentino is going to be there this year. There's been James Hill in the past, Peter D'Aquino, and of course all the slack key guys like Sonny Lim and Uncle Ledward Kapana and Uncle Kevin Brown. The list goes on and on and on. But to have personal access to these guys through their group workshops, and also through, 30 or 40-minute private lessons throughout the weeks, that you really have a chance to ask sky is the limit kind of questions. And a lot of times this doesn't get super taken advantage of, because there's still lessons that need to be studied a little bit from other things. For instance, if you're working through my course, there is a lot of content there, naturally. But as far as it relates to a workshop, to get the most out of a workshop, I feel like, you don't necessarily have to have learned the whole entire course, but if you've just kind of skimmed your way across and just lightly touched on things, especially in like the beginner or the intermediate section, and this goes for any course or any lessons that you're taking, if you've only scratched the surface of what the potential lessons are for you as far as implemented practice, stuff that you can work on in your day-to-day when you have free time, as opposed to during the time when you're spending thousands of dollars to go to the workshop or be a part of it. It's really helpful to have really explored those things as fully as possible, because then when you roll up to workshop classes, you're kind of maxed out with what you have up to that point been exposed to. And anything at the workshop can be either new, or as you work through it, you can ask for assistance to make things harder. As a teacher, as I'm teaching these workshop group classes, there's a wide range of skill levels in these classes. And so I kind of have to navigate making sure everybody's happy within the framework of whatever level I'm teaching. If I'm teaching a beginner class, we go as slow as the slowest person. And that's how it goes. If I'm teaching an advanced class, I go as fast as the fastest person and, keep up or don't. But in an intermediate class, which is what 95% of classes seem to be these days, is everybody's an intermediate player because we just don't know what to do with everybody. So we sort them into the intermediate class and let the teachers figure out what to do with it. That's all right. But there's a little bit of touch and go navigating. Okay, where are they at? Who am I losing? Who is bored? Kind of a thing. However, as a teacher, it is a lot easier to make something immediately more difficult for somebody who is advanced in the context of a classroom setting than it is to help a beginner player keep up. And so if you're sitting in on a class and it's kind of like, I sort of know this stuff. I'm not really learning anything. I want to be pushed. I want to get the most out of it as is possible. I know I would be thrilled if a student asked, like, hey, this is great, but can you give me a little bit of like side homework to make it a little harder? Not in a way like you're showing off to the class or anything, but just like, just like a quick, hey, I have a question. What are some ways I can challenge myself more with this same content? And most teachers are going to be thrilled and give you a whole heap of different things that you can try, and they can give it to you very quickly without distracting from the rest of the class. And then the rest of the class goes on its way. And as you are following along with that content, you can be kind of spinning it into your own more advanced style of the same music. So that's a benefit of having prepared. And it's always a journey. You can never over prepare. You can always practice more. You can always follow through your lessons more. You can always learn more songs. But with that said, there is a lot of room, usually that I see, room for improvement of coming to the workshop just a little bit more overcharged, having practiced and having done your thing. That said, I realize that workshops for a lot of people are just really a happy time to be doing something that they really love to do with amazing people, with their friends, with inspiring instructors, things like that. And it's just a good time, and they don't want to pressure themselves by having, musical expectations for themselves. But if you're there to really get the very most out of your lessons, pushing the gas pedal is going to serve you quite well. And so as a kid growing up at Uncle Kyoki's workshops, that is what I tried to do. And there were years when I felt like I didn't achieve that goal. I didn't push the pedal hard enough during the rest of the years. Like, Herb told me this same thing last year, and I didn't quite get around to putting in the time that it needs for me to really get it and for me to go on to the next thing. And so it's all just part of the personal journey of music. It's just that, how far do you want to push yourself? What do you want to be able to do? How high of a level do you want to reach? And from there, your teachers can fit you in accordingly. But it's difficult to help you reach your goals if the goals that were set previously or with other instructors or other things that you need to be working on, if you haven't met those goals yet, then it's a little bit hard to add more things to your plate. It becomes more overwhelming. So if you are in the process of learning 20 songs and you're learning how to fingerpick and you're learning how to use Pima and you're learning how to do this, that, and the other thing, especially if you're going into a very intensive week of learning, what I might do is kind of wrap some of those things up several weeks in advance of when your workshop is going to be, or when your big lesson day or days are going to be. Because then if you feel like you kind of, okay, I finished that goal, I learned that song all the way through, I finished my Pima finger picking exercise and I can play it just right out of the gate when I sit down with my ukulele and play it perfectly the first time. When you have that proficiency with the material, then it becomes easier. You've kind of cleared your plate and there's room for more lessons to go onto it. Whereas if you're kind of scrambling in the middle of a whole bunch of things or things that, oh, I learned this last year, but I haven't had a chance to really internalize it, it's still kind of on your plate. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a problem. But as far as having room to get the most out of the moment, a clear plate is going to give you the most headroom before you start getting cross-eyed in class and going, that's it, my brain is full. Which is a problem during workshops. We see that very often, and often in the last session of the day. It's like, forget about teaching anything. Let's just sit around and tell stories, because everybody has already spent 4 long class sessions or 5 class sessions, really working hard. And that last one is just a little bit of a throwaway. But that's all right. So it's really a treat for me to teach at Uncle George's workshop and any workshop. I think that a lot of folks might look at me from the outside and say, like, here's an accomplished musician. He's a professional. He does the thing. And, I see him on YouTube and wow, that's great. And I appreciate that. But also, I would encourage you to keep in mind that for all of us that are involved in this industry, when we go to these workshops, it's really just a treat from end to end. We have as much fun as the students, even though we're working and the students are working to learn, of course. But even if we're super slamming, there's still moments where we get to catch up with our peers, meet new people who we idolize. And especially for a guy like me, who in the stack of instructors at a workshop like Uncle George's, I'm still hovering kind of around the bottom. And so to be there at all is kind of a privilege, and certainly to be there as a staff member. Like, I remember the first year I got invited to go, I was filling in, I think Brian Tolentino had to drop out and David Kamakahi couldn't make it, or vice versa. And Auntie Nancy contacted me. It's like, hey, kind of last minute, but would you be willing to come to the workshop and teach? not just come to the workshop, but come to the workshop and be one of our instructors. And I was like, absolutely. I will cancel any and every plans that I possibly have and be there. And so I did. And I guess I made an impression and they appreciated what I did, because I keep getting invited back. And at this point, this is the 5th or 6th year I've done it. I've become kind of a fixture, and they know what I provide, and they know that I'm an asset to the lineup. But I still feel like the kid in the candy shop, because every year I go, I get to hang out with people that I grew up listening to their records and trying to play their songs. And still, these are the guys to be. These are the guys to emulate. These are the heroes. And so to be a part of it is such a treat every single year. And I'm just super, super privileged that I get to be part of it at a teacher capacity. Because there's a certain bit of separation between the teacher and the students that just is kind of inherent to what's going on. There's like the skill difference. And then there's also kind of the camaraderie distance to a certain extent. I mean, certainly we have our relationships with the students and we can always build more of those, and it's very fun. But it's just, there's kind of a different relationship when you're on stage with somebody and you get to interact with them musically at that high professional level. It's just like, those are the boys, and to be a part of that is so cool. And so when folks see my name on a lineup somewhere, it's, it's not because I take it for granted and like, oh yeah, of course I was going to be there. I'm like as amazed as anybody that it's happening, and I'm always so thrilled. So another sort of observation I've made over the years about especially Hawaiian music workshops is that the kanikapila portion of it, which is a very Hawaiian thing. Kanikapila means basically, let's make music, let's play music, that sort of a thing. It is a chance for us to sit down in a circle, and you just go around the circle and everybody chooses a song and you just play music. It's not a performance. It's just a jam session, but it's very much kind of like King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, where they used a round table because everybody was equal and there wasn't anybody who was, higher ranking than the next guy. And so Kanikapila is kind of like that. And it's a chance for folks to get to interact with the instructors and with the musicians, who maybe the instructors have their own jam sessions during the week or they perform on stage, but the students don't really get that except at Kanikapila. And so this is a huge opportunity, because being able to interact in that way is really its own kind of thing. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned there. And there's a lot of stories to be made there, right? It's so cool to be able to say, like, I sat at the Kanikapila and I jammed with Uncle Led. I jammed with Herb, right? I jammed with any of these great Hawaiian musicians. And to be involved in that is very special. But what I see a lot of times, and all my students are going to have a grin on their face as I say this, is that people are glued to the paper. They're not able to, in the moment, appreciate what's happening or react intuitively, because they're so concerned they're going to play a wrong chord or miss a change or sing the words wrong or whatever, that they are going whole hog on their Western culture background and looking at that page to make sure they can read every single chord change and every single lyric. And that's fine. Lots of people do that. I've done a lot of that myself. There's nothing wrong with it. But in a situation where you have this Kanikapila atmosphere, eventually, when you start to kind of level up and get more comfortable in that environment, you realize, oh, I've been missing out on so much of the picture because I've been really worried about being in the book and reading the page and making sure that I'm playing the right chords and reading it correctly. When you're using your eyeballs like that and you're engaged with the paper, you know that if you take your eyes away for a sec, it's going to take you a moment to reestablish where you're at on the page. And in that moment of reestablishment, you might get lost. And after you've done this 1 or 2 times in the jam and you feel silly because you're playing the wrong chords all of a sudden, you're going to be less likely to take your eyes off of the paper, because when you do that, you mess up, right? That's the lesson that gets learned. But when you don't look up from the paper, you miss all the interactions that are happening, all the little musical jokes that are going on, because you're using your eyeballs to play the song as opposed to your ears, with your eyes as an auxiliary to interact with the people you're jamming with, right? So your ears tell you what's going on. You can hear the music as it goes along. Maybe you recognize chord changes as they happen. Maybe you don't. If you don't, by listening, eventually you will, right? That's the beauty of it, is just by doing it enough, you're going to start to figure it out. And once you have moved to using your ears, then you can use your eyes for other things. You can either watch your fingers if you need to see what you're doing to make your chord changes, or you can look around the circle and say, wow, I'm sitting right next to Jeff Peterson, or I'm sitting right next to Stephen Inglis, or I'm sitting right next to Peter D'Aquino. And they're having the time of their lives because they're just jamming with their buddies and playing intuitively, and it's very casual. And when it's casual, it's easy to cut loose because there's no stakes. You're not on stage. It's not being recorded. You're not playing for people who paid for a ticket or whatever. It can be really goofy and really fun. And some of the best moments are created there. And so what I encourage folks to do is to at least put in enough time in your practice, on your own time practice, to become comfortable with the concept of playing by ear. The concept of maybe looking at the sheet briefly, seeing what the chords are. Okay, I see that we have a C and we have an F, and then, there's an A minor down here in this part. I better watch out for that. And then this part goes to G. We're leading this section from a G7 to an F. and then a G7, and then an F, and then we go back to the C. When you kind of give yourself the overview and see what's there, see what the index of the song looks like, if you will, and then stop looking at it and use your ears to decipher the rest of what's going on, then you have that opportunity to tune in organically. And it might not be perfect, but the great thing about a kanikapila is there's usually enough people that what you're playing doesn't matter. That might sound a little harsh because we all want what we play to matter. But when you're playing with a group of 20 people or 50 people or 100 people, as it can be in some of these big jams at Uncle George's workshop, no one's going to notice if you play the wrong chord, myself included, right? Except Uncle George's is a little different because it's so big that the instructors actually plug into a mixing board and there's a little center speaker that allows everybody to kind of stay on track, because playing music in a huge, giant group, just acoustically, can kind of be a little bit like that game Telephone, where you're whispering something in somebody's ear, and then they whisper what they thought they heard, and then the next guy whispers what he thought he heard, and by the end it's all garbled. Same thing with music. It's that as you move further and further away from the person who's leading the song, all the chord changes get delayed because you're listening to the person next to you. And so by having the main central speaker thing, the instructors can kind of be the guardrails and keep everything on track. Doesn't always work, but most of the time it does. But suffice to say that if you're jamming in a group and you play something wrong, by the time you take your foot off the gas and realize, oh crap, I played something wrong, I played the wrong chord, that's not right there, and you stop playing to reassess where you're at, or you start playing the X chord where you just mute the strings, chicka, 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 you're going to be able to get back on track, avoid most of the damage. If you're playing super loud, maybe somebody heard that you played, an F where you're supposed to be playing a C. But beyond that, no one's really going to notice. And so with the knowledge that no one's really going to notice, that should be very liberating to feel like you can just be in this moment and learn to play organically. Take it for what it is, really, really dig in and see what's going on. And instead of looking at the sheet, look at one of the instructor's fingers or whoever's leading the song. They probably know the song best. So see what chords they're playing. Then you're having to kind of look and adapt and see, okay, that looks like a G chord. Okay, that looks like a D7 chord. Oh, that's now an A7 chord. Interesting. Now, it's a B7 chord. However the song goes, somebody's got to be playing the right chords, so you can watch that person, and instead of being glued to something static that doesn't actually tell you music, it doesn't actually contain any music itself, you could be listening to somebody who is actually creating the music, who is leading the music, and see what they're doing. And even if that is your interaction, I feel like that's a big upgrade from just looking at the paper the whole time. And like I've said already, I know that it's just fun for a lot of people. That's great. I'm not here to judge. I'm just sharing my impression of ways that I feel like I see students leaving things on the table as far as getting the most out of the opportunity. I remember that, the first couple of years that I went to Uncle Kyoki's workshop and I sat in the kanikapila, it was very stressful, right? The first couple times you do it, it's really super scary, especially there because, for the most part during that era, I was going almost weekly to Sam Rosen's shop in Holualoa, and we'd jam under the shop once a week. And that was fabulous. I learned so much jamming with those guys, and that was pretty low key. But when you're sitting there and oh my gosh, Herbo to Junior's like right there. He's like 6 feet away from me. And you're the little kid who's like so excited and just idolizes this guy. You've got his CDs in your car and you listen to him. It's pretty intimidating. And so you don't want to mess up. And that pressure, like I've said, it kind of encourages you to really get attached to the book so you don't mess up. But really, No one cares. That's what took me a long time to learn, is that no one cares. None of these guys, it's no skin off any of their nose if you play the wrong chord or if you play a pa'ani and you play all the wrong notes. They don't care. They won't even judge you because they know that at one point they were there. And from most of my experiences with Hawaiian musicians is that they're all very humble, they're all very encouraging, and they're all very, compassionate and just good people for the most part. And the ones who are, at that high level, they don't have anything to prove anymore. There's no competition whatsoever. The ego comes out when you're kind of like an in-between dude who wants to really make it, right? When you're at the top level, when you're Uncle Led, it's like you're at the top. There's no one else there. And you can just enjoy music for the sake of enjoying music. And so that means you don't have to feel like, haha, I could play that if I wanted to. That doesn't matter. That's not part of the equation in anybody's head when we are sitting there jamming and we're at a kanikapila and somebody plays a wrong chord or somebody biffs a pa'ani. It's like, well, they're going to learn from that. That's like the most harsh thing that anybody would say. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes you laugh, but it's not ever like a put down. It's just like, gosh, I remember that too. That was like so intimidating, so scary. I'm so glad I've made it to a place where I don't have to be so freaked out about this anymore. And that only comes from practice. That only comes from doing it a lot. And it only comes from really taking advantage of those situations. So if you play at an ukulele group regularly, and you're going to go to one of these higher level workshops, or you get a chance to jam with somebody who is, out of your league, so to speak, practice playing at your normal jam without your book quite as much. Look at the page, see what kind of chords are going on, and then turn the page away. You know what key the song's in, you kind of know the index of chords you're going to need to play through. And then just send it. See what happens. Watch the guy next to you. Watch the leader of the song. See what they're playing. And follow along that way so that you're starting to trust your intuition and you can be a part of the music that's being created as opposed to what? As opposed to just being present for it, perhaps. Right? If you're just looking at the page and you're just kind of strumming along and you're not actually in the moment because you're stuck to the page, you're just kind of there. You're providing some basic musical content, but there's no real human connection that's happening because you're not able to really connect in that way because you're looking at the page. Anyways, that's my encouragement for, don't worry about what your level is. Don't worry about playing it right or wrong. Just play. Just put the page away and find a way that you can interact. Even if it's just holding your muted strings and strumming that way, you can be practicing your timing and you can be appreciating the moment. Because a lot of these guys at these workshops, they're old timers, We hope that every year we come back, they're going to still be in that same chair. But one year they're not going to be. And for me personally, I want to, absorb that as much as possible. I want to be able to see them and smile at them and interact with them and know that we had a moment, small as it might have been, we had a moment in the music, or to have, seen two of the uncles who are really close, see them have a moment in the music. You miss all that if you're looking at the page. So try and play by ear a little bit more. Try and play by watching other people a little bit more and just be a little bit more present as you're playing in these kanikapila situations, because it's really going to, you might not be perfect, but your experience of the situation is going to be vastly improved, I think. Something else that I think it's interesting for students to hear and realize is that the teachers learn almost as much as the students. I know that my trajectory of learning, the first time I went to Uncle George's workshop to teach, that was like a ticket to the top of the building in the fast elevator. It was like, wow, hanging on for dear life, trying to help these people learn some ukulele and being surrounded by all these different guys. I was learning so much so fast. And, over the years, as you kind of figure out your shtick, you figure out the best ways to explain things, how to be a better teacher, that curve slows down a little bit. But still, when I go to the workshop, that's like my intensive week of learning how to be a better player myself, because I'm hanging out with other amazing peers and amazing heroes who play so much better than me and really have a lot of things that I can pick up from them. But also through teaching and seeing the students do something or interpret something that I said in a way that I didn't expect. It makes me go, well, I guess I didn't explain that clear enough. Or maybe the way they picked it up was something that was even more valuable than what I was trying to say. And I have to remember that for next time. Like, wow, that really worked super well. Everybody got it. It kept the class really rolling. I'm going to try and do that again. And so I always say that the teacher learns more than the student. You might not believe it, but if you ever get to a point where you're teaching really makes you get it together, be able to play your content, what you're teaching, you learn to play it better. And also just from interacting with the students and seeing how they respond to what you're teaching, you learn so much just from seeing that. And, as stupid as it is, if you're sitting in class and you're like, okay, let's practice strumming quarter notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. When you're doing that, maybe when you just play, it's no big deal. But as you're teaching and you're in front of the class, it's a little bit of a performance. You need to hold everything together. You realize how bad your quarter notes on C are. And so it's like, oh boy, I really should practice this, or I should practice something along these lines that will help me get better at that. And so it's really just another reminder that music's not a competition. We're all on our journey. And when you come to a situation like a big workshop like this, that there is nowhere to be. There's nothing to prove. I think if you come into it with something to prove, whether as an instructor or as a student, then, I think that's really going to be a burden for you as well as kind of for everybody else. It's sort of a bummer when someone brings that attitude to the party, because it's not very useful to have a competition, because all music is just a beautiful way of expressing ourselves, and all that the instructors are trying to do for the students is help them learn to better express themselves. And since no two of us are ever alike, we can just hopefully let go of the ego, let it float out the windows, and just play some music that has meaning to you, to the student, and maybe to the people who are listening to it. That's the goal. And, that's my wish for these workshops, is that everybody can come into it and genuinely have a good time, enjoy themselves, and feel like they were able to express themselves just a little bit, to be seen just a little bit through their music and through the expression that it provides. One more bit of encouragement that I'll share before I kind of wrap this up is to take advantage of open mic opportunities. There is, at Uncle George's workshop, every year there's an open mic night, and they have at the location at the Napili Kai Beach Resort, there is the Aloha Pavilion where Uncle George normally does his Slack Key show every week on Wednesdays. If you ever go to Maui, definitely look it up, because it's consistently some of the best Hawaiian music you will probably ever hear. But during the workshop, we use that same stage for an open mic night. And so it allows the students to kind of showcase what they've been working on, to get up in front of the instructors and the peers and just kind of have their own moment to shine. And it always surprises me at how small the sign-up list is. There's always the regulars, the guys who just get a big kick out of it and they're comfortable enough with their music and what they do to take advantage. But then there's also a lot of folks that you see who have something really nice to play, but they're just very shy about it. And if that's your happy place, that's fine. I get it. I'm an introverted person. I like to be quiet. I would rather probably sit in a room with 5 people and not say anything than to have to carry on a conversation. I have no problem with silence. But I think that there is a lot of growing to be done through the performance of the music as well. Because while it feels like when you're maybe playing in class, like, oh, why don't you show the class what you just did? And you play something like that, it feels like the whole world is watching you. But really, it's not going to have that much of an impact because it's just the class and it's just kind of a casual moment. But when you go up on stage and you're singing through a microphone and you have the attention of the entire room, it's really a different kind of personal transmission, right? The download bandwidth is very different from just kind of a humble example or a humble, oh, I'm just kind of playing this for myself off in the corner. And it feels like everybody's watching. They're not really, but it feels like everybody's watching as opposed to everybody actually watching because they are tuned in and paying attention. And so I feel like if you think that you want to do that or you would like to be able to do that, then you should do it. Even if it feels unattainable and it feels like you're going to throw up and you're so nervous, it's just unbearable. I think that if you can get over that hump and do it, then it's one more step forward towards being that little bit closer to music as the entire experience, right? Bringing it to people as a performance, because you can learn music all day, you can play your own music all day, but really the last piece of the puzzle is sharing it in a performance aspect. And as many people will tell you, there's nothing like it. It's the best kind of drug when you kind of get it all dialed in and you go up on stage and you play the song and then everybody claps and you know that you did your best. That is the best feeling in the world. And if you think that, boy, I wish I could do that, figure out a way to make it happen. Take advantage of those opportunities. Even if you play something really simple, right? Whatever your song is, that's another good reason to always have songs in your repertoire. As you learn, don't song skip. Don't hop between songs like, oh, I'm going to learn a piece of this song. Okay, I'm done with that. Learn a different song. I'm done with that. Learn another song. Have 3 or 4 songs that you know that you can pull out at a moment's notice and just play from memory, because then that's your moment to share music, to be a musician yourself. I know it feels like a lot of times when you're in a student role that you're, oh, I'm just a student. I don't get to be a musician. But everybody gets to be a musician. You just have to reach out and grab it. And you can't be a musician unless you have some sort of songs or some sort of expression, at least, to share. And so I think that open mics are a great way to do that. If you think you would like to be able to do that, or you wished you could do that, figure out a way to do that. Just remember that for the most part, especially here in Hawaii, everybody's rooting for you. There's nobody out there. And the only people who are out there who think this way, you don't need their approval anyways, because they're probably not the best kind of people you want to be hanging out with. But for the huge most part of everybody, they're going to be rooting for you. They want you to succeed. They want to see you have that moment to shine and to experience your music. I think that it's not something that comes to mind too often, but even as instructors, we see students in classes and we never get really a chance to know what they're about. And then when it comes to open mic and they go up on stage and they play us a song, it's like, oh, okay, I get it now. I understand them personally a little bit better because I've felt what kind of emotion they bring to music, or I see their chops a little bit better. I see, maybe where they're still continuing to improve, where they need to improve more. And it just all kind of falls into place a little bit better. And it allows the instructors to connect better to the students. And so if you never put yourself out there, I think you're limiting the depth to which you're ever going to be able to relate to an instructor. Because that's really it's a big moment to, as an instructor, watch a student get up on stage and go, oh, wow, that takes balls to go up on stage, play your song, do your thing, even if you mess it up. Nobody cares. But it takes a sort of bravery to go up there and do that. And that really is impressive. And we all want to see that succeed and see it pay off for the person who's doing that. So if you're at a place where people boo or throw tomatoes at you, whatever, don't go back. It's not the kind of, that's not the vibe that music should ever, ever, ever portray. Music is all about positivity and expression. And if it's not your cup of tea, move on, go to the next open mic where maybe it's more your speed. But just remember that everybody's always rooting for you. And if they're not, they should be. So hopefully that's a little bit insightful. That's just some things that come to mind regarding workshop stuff and things that I see students doing or not doing that I feel like if I could go back in time, I would tell myself to take more advantage of. Do this, do this, do this. You'll get more out of the experience. So hopefully that's useful. Even if you're not planning on going to a workshop anytime soon or ever, there's probably some interesting tidbits in there regarding musical sorts of things that can probably be applied in other aspects of your music or your music social life, whatever it might be. And yeah, I really just want to always try and encourage people. Encourage. Express, because that's what music's all about. It's not a competition. It's not a competition. So anyways, I'm on Maui right now. I mean, not while I'm recording this, but while you're first hearing it, at the time you are first hearing it, I'm on Maui. Hopefully having the time of my life. I will be disappointed if I'm not, because in the past it's always been just an absolute highlight. Really looking forward to it. Looking forward to getting to spend more time with Brian Tolentino, who is somebody I have kind of briefly crossed paths with. I taught at the Hawaii Island Ukulele Retreat in 2014, maybe. I came down to Kalani Honua in Puna for a day and taught a couple workshops just for the day. I wasn't a staff instructor. I just was kind of a drop-in. And Brian was there the entire week for the whole workshop. And so for that day, I got to kind of hang out with him, and we kind of hit it off because we were both, kind of the more local dudes in the scene, which is kind of weird, but that is how it turned out. We kind of hit it off. And so I'm looking forward to connecting with him better. Can't wait to see all of the usual suspects. It's always such a treat to get to jam with the uncles and to hear their music, because really everything they play could go on a CD, and everything that they play, in a way it has gone on a CD, and in a way those are the songs that I've heard on the radio, that I've listened to in my car. That's what they're playing. And so to get to interact with them musically is always such a treat, and always such an inspiration, and such a seed for new ideas for my own playing. And it's just a nice chance to talk shop and catch up and feel, especially kind of now that we're coming out of COVID, hopefully we'll be a little bit more on the downturn by the time the workshop comes around. But in this time of a little bit more isolation than normal, it's a nice chance to kind of feel like a human again and get to interact with folks and take advantage of all that music has given us across the years. So thanks for tuning in. Once again, please go check out my new video course. It's really the best of the best, all the good stuff that I want to teach students, but maybe don't get around to during a workshop because of, levels being stuck at a certain point or workshop structure being a certain way. Everything in the video course is like what I would want to teach. If I could move the classes along as fast as I would like and really hit the important points that I would like to share as a teacher, it might not be what the students think they need to learn, but I think that it's all interesting, and it's things that as a teacher I feel like these are good things. This is kind of the order that I wish I had learned it in, and it's just some kind of, in addition to the lessons, there's sort of the sequential guidance of creating a framework for yourself and for understanding the instrument better. So if you're so inclined, go check it out. Please send me an email if you have any questions whatsoever about the content and what it provides. The Live Ukulele podcast is published on the first and third Saturdays of every month. We'll see you in the next episode. Be well out there. Express yourself through music. Be bold. Don't be afraid to turn the page over. You can do it. I believe in you. You just have to struggle through it for a little bit, and then it'll become easier and easier and easier, and then someday you'll be like, why did I ever need the page? And that someday is not as far away as you would think if you consistently work on that intuitive side of music. So flip the coin over, work on it from that angle, and I'll catch you in the next episode. All my best. Aloha.